It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical, Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, who has a bigger billing than Greg Rosenthal, is Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
As Tony pointed out, it's probably done in order of closeness to the studio.
All I know is that it was liked by the host of said show. So, you know, we can say what we want about it. I'm just saying what happened in the reaction of said reaction. Neil, how the hell are we?
Very, very well. I say I'll be even better if it's finally over.
Neil's reporting that just came out that Ezekiel Elliott should be suspended for the next 6 games. I'll believe it when I see it. Good news for me. That means he's suspended for Thanksgiving in Cowboy Stadium for Washington. I believe he's then suspended for the Eagles' first game against the Cowboys in 2 weeks' time, is it? Is that right?
Next week.
Next week? Oh, you're on a bye this week, aren't you? And he'll be back for the Seahawks game, I believe, on Christmas Eve.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, 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 indeed. Ho, ho, indeed. Although, you know, I remember when the Seahawks used to be good. Yeah, I went there. We beat them. What are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? Stone them in their own. Stone the 12s in their own house.
Yeah, you sail that ship alone.
I'm sailing it alone. You know what I mean? I don't believe the hype, and you know I don't. Dutton, we used to have a load of hot takes. I have got a load of hot takes, but I'm going to bottle them up. Do you know why I'm going to bottle them up, Dutton? Because you know we don't talk about enough the Philadelphia Eagles. So do you know what we're going to do? We're going to speak to Fran Duffy before we get into the fancy stuff this week and go deep dive on the Eagles, because, you know, if you don't follow Fran and you love the Eagles, what are you doing? Because in theory, Fran gives you the breakdown of every single play ever created by the Eagles, and we're interested to get his thoughts on things like, did you expect this? How good's this front four? Is Jim Schwartz actually going to be a coach there next year? And is there any potential bumps to stop them getting the number 1 seed?
Well, one of them may have been removed.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll see from Fran what he thinks about it. We'll then do the standard Dutton fantasy darling and losers, and then we'll go and finish with the fancy team of the week. I'm not going to lie to you, Dutton. My team is truly horrible in terms of players picked, but I actually secretly love it.
Oh, I love mine.
The games that are involved in my draft fancy team of the week are truly horrific games. If you would have told me I was picking players in these games 10 weeks ago, I would have called you a liar.
It's good to lie sometimes.
I'm not doing that, not going down that avenue any way, shape or form. So anyway, let's get on with the show, and let's get on and call Fran Duffy and talk to him about all things Philadelphia Eagles. And joining us now to outnumber me in the Philadelphia Eagles stakes is Mr. Fran Duffy. Fran is knower of all things Philadelphia Eagles, and let's be brutally honest, they're the best team in the NFL at the moment. It seemed like an opportune moment to speak to him. Fran, how are we today?
I'm doing great, guys. I appreciate you having me.
So Fran, first, let's just put it out in the open. You know, a few people thought the Eagles would do okay. I know. For example, Robert Mays thought they'd make the playoffs. Some others didn't. I don't think anyone expected 8-1. What did you expect at the start of the season?
Well, here's the way I looked at it, guys, was that this team was I believe 7-9 a year ago, and they got better this year, or this offseason, I should say, from a personnel standpoint. So you added some key pieces on both sides of the football, whether you look at an Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith and LeGarrette Blount, and then you go on the defensive side to guys like Tim Jernigan and the additions they made in the secondary, both at the corner spot and on the inside at nickel. You look at the defensive end position with Chris Long and Derek Barnett. I mean, they became a better team from a pure personnel standpoint over the course of the offseason. So I expected a team that was going to be in the playoff hunt for sure. Now, did I necessarily expect 8-1? I don't know that I can sit here truthfully and say that, but I certainly expected a team that was going to for sure be in the hunt for the top spot in the NFC East.
Obviously, one of the big constants from last year to this, so you mentioned all the change, is Carson Wentz. On paper, obviously, the difference between the 2016 Wentz and the 2017 one is it's a marked difference across every major category. From the All-22, the film version, as it were, is he doing anything remarkably different to what he did last year? Or is it just a case of he's got better surrounding talent with him?
Well, I think that the talent certainly helps, and the guys that were here with him have also gotten better. You look at Zach Ertz. I think he's running routes at a more efficient rate than he probably ever has in his career. He's doing a great job right now in a lot of areas of his game. Nelson Aguilar has obviously seen a huge uptick in terms of his performance. And then you add a guy like an Alshon Jeffrey in the back end. The run game has been more consistent from a week in, week out basis this year. So that certainly has helped. But when you put Carson in a vacuum and you look, we saw flashes of all the things that we're seeing now on a week-to-week basis. We saw flashes of everything last year, but they were just that. They were flashes. And especially in the second half of the year, you could see that he was a rookie quarterback that was still kind of, trying to stay ahead of schedule and try and keep pace. When you first arrive in the NFL, from a mental standpoint, not from a physical standpoint, but mentally, you're just treading water and you're trying to do everything you can to try and soak in each weekly game plan and stay on top of what you're doing. Because remember, the NFL season is a long and arduous one. Camp starts earlier than it does at the college level. The games start much earlier, and then also you play a lot more games. So you're seeing a guy who's very confident, very comfortable in everything he's doing, and you're just seeing a guy who's just in total command of the offense. Again, from a mental perspective, and you see all the decisions he's making with the football. I can go back to a sequence of plays that we actually used this week on my show, Eagles Game Plan, where last year they ran one concept against the Seattle Seahawks, and Carson Wentz didn't see a defender. It was Cam Chancellor hanging out in the middle of the field on the backside, and he read the route, jumped in, and made an interception. You fast forward to this year, they run the same exact play, and the Kansas City Chiefs had a player in Marcus Peters on the complete opposite side of the field who was robbing that play from the jump and came from a great distance to take the throw away, but Carson was able to see him. So you just see a guy who is much more confident, much more in control, and you see that vision in the decision-making to not force the issue. Take what the defense gives you, keep moving the ball, stay ahead of the sticks, and good things will happen. So he's becoming incredibly efficient. He's taking his deep shots, and really just across the board, he's checking every single box. So it's been really, really good to see how quickly he's developed.
There's some people who I'm not even going to glorify their existence by mentioning their names here, who obviously they must have had some. I can only think that Carson must have kicked their dog or stole their parking space at one point, because they made initial assessments of him coming into the NFL at the draft, and quite frankly, he's proving them wrong with every passing game, but they refuse to let it go. Obviously, you're somewhat biased as, a fan and an employee, but how annoying is it that these arguments keep coming back up?
Well, look, I can't speak for those guys and how they view it and how they see Carson and how they see this Eagles offense. I could just go by what I see. Obviously what I see is, like I said, a guy that's developing at a very high rate. And I think when you talk with people that have been around the NFL for a long time, people that have watched and studied the NFL for a long time from an analytical standpoint and have watched the tape for years and years and years, the traits that it takes to be successful at the NFL, and Carson has presented all of those traits. So, all I can do, like I said, is worry about what I see and stand by my opinion, and my opinion is that he's developed into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
In last week, there was a shellacking in Philadelphia over the Denver Broncos, and Chris Harris, cornerback at the Broncos, said a strange thing to me, and he said it was like watching the Kansas City Chiefs offense. I may have had to give Mr. Harris a history lesson in terms of where the Chiefs head coach previously used to coach. And that brings a question for me, Fran. Are you seeing, I suppose, quote unquote, old Andy Reid circa 2003, 2004 plays back in the playbook, or is Doug Peterson totally change the scheme and Chris Harris doesn't know what he's talking about?
Well, I think that what you're seeing is that there's a wide variety of concepts in this Doug Peterson playbook, and that, there's going to be some go-to concepts. They're going to run their 3-level stretch that can attack all 3 levels of the field. They're going to run their in-breaking route concepts with guys going over the middle, and they're concepts that we've seen in this Eagles playbook, not just from Andy Reid, but also some things that were left over from Chip Kelly. You see some things that a lot of people will say, oh, it's a college offense, and I know that was a part of Chris Harris's quote as well. And I think that's really, you're just looking at the things that are successful at every level of football. Doug Peterson is taking all of those into account. It's not just, hey, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to keep my eyes focused, and this is exactly what I want to play. We're not going to be flexible at all. No, Doug Peterson and that entire offensive staff, Frank Reich and John DeFilippo, Deuce Staley, Jeff Stoutland in the run game. I mean, everybody has an input into how the offense is going to look. Carson Wentz as well. There's been a lot written locally here in Philadelphia about the impact he's had and some of the plays that he's requested from his days at North Dakota State. So you have to give a lot of credit to this coaching staff for, not being stuck in their ways and being flexible and be willing to try new things and different things. And most importantly, understanding that what their tendencies are and then doing different things to play off of that. And I think that's one of the things that has really helped this engine run, is that it's constantly changing. You're keeping defenses on their toes, and you're really trying to make the most of each week.
Obviously, we're talking about the defense, which I think a lot of people thought it was going to be good last year when Jim Schwartz came in, but it started well. It had its moments, but really has kicked on this year. Obviously from what you've seen, you watch an awful lot of tape. Is this one of, if not the best front four in the NFL at the moment? Because if I need something to make me smile or laugh, I just look at all these teams who keep trying to block Fletcher Cox one-on-one, and it just makes me smile that it doesn't work.
Yeah, there's I've definitely had a couple of those moments sitting here and watching where it kind of boggles my mind. But then, and it's funny, I might actually write a piece on this next week in terms of what they're doing as a staff to get Fletcher Cox those one-on-one opportunities. And, it's not by mistake and by happenstance or by coincidence that those things happen. They've done a lot this year in terms of their alignments, in terms of their pressure schemes, a lot of the things they're doing in their sub-packages to really kind of dictate to offenses, this is how you're going to have to protect, and you're going to have to pick your poison. Do you want to slide your extra protection to an extra blitzer? Do you want to have to slide your protection to 2 defensive ends on the same side? Or are you going to slide your protection to Fletcher Cox? And, if you're going to slide one way, we're going to make you pay. And if you slide the other, well, we're going to make you pay again. And that's what's been really fun to see, is all the different things they're doing from a pressure standpoint. Jim Schwartz is not a high-volume blitzer. They've been very, very selective in terms of sending extra defenders. But when you watch them play, they're very selective, and they're very effective in terms of how they get after the quarterback.
In the Eagles front office, or what is there an expectation, given the way that the defense is played, and as you said, it's not necessarily blitz heavy, that Jim Schwartz might be having his final year as the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles and maybe looking to get a head coaching job next year?
That's a tough question. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that this team, and that's all that they've ever said, the players and coaches and everybody, is that they're worried about 1 week at a time. You're going to go 1-0 each and every week. That's the goal, and I think that's really what's helped them get to this point in the season, where they're 8-1, and they're focused now, obviously, on resting up and getting ready for down the stretch, the second half of the year. But then the Dallas Cowboys in Week 11.
There's another member of the coaching staff. I actually was lucky enough to get to speak to him in the summer. That obviously is quite highly thought of and is integral to the development of Carson Wentz, and that's the QB coach, John DeFilippo. As you say, you can't really, can't say that if he's going to move on or whatnot. But do you think, from your dealings with him and what you've seen, has he got a brighter, has he got a future above just that of a quarterback coach in the NFL?
Well, I think he's already been there, right? I mean, he's been an offensive coordinator in this league, and all my interactions with him, he's come on Eagles Game Plan multiple times. You can find those segments on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, and he's been outstanding, and you can't deny the impact that he's had, not just on the scheme, but also on the development of Carson, like you said. But you got to give credit to everybody in that group, and that's Doug Peterson, that's Frank Reich, those triumvirate, those three former quarterbacks on the coaching staff, and everything that they've done to help promote Carson and really kind of get him to where he is today. I think you have to give all three of those coaches a lot of credit.
If we look forward after the bye, then as you said, Dallas next up, and now what it looks like, we say again, and it could change in the next half an hour, and as the last 4 or 5 times Zeke Elliott is out. But I'm wondering, as a Washington fan, I'm wondering if Doug Peterson and the staff will be looking at tape of Washington as Philadelphia have games at Seattle and at the Rams, 2 games in which Washington have won earlier in the year. And I wonder if they'll be trying to get any tips and tricks.
Yeah, I think that that happens more often than you would think. Obviously that when coaches are going back and they're looking at film and they're seeing what teams do well, what their upcoming opponents do well. You're also going to look at what has worked against them and what other teams have done to try and attack them. Do you have something in your toolbox that can serve the same purpose? And that's something that certainly that the Eagles coaching staff will look to do. The bye week is a very interesting time for coaches because, there's a little bit of time off, but they're in the office and they're grinding and they're, self-scouting. You're evaluating what you're doing and trying to make sure, okay, are we being too predictable in every situation you could possibly think of, down and distance, personnel groupings on both sides of the ball. You're trying to prevent yourself from being too predictable. And then also, if you find that you are being predictable, okay, what do we do to counteract that? What can we do to kind of set defenses up or set offenses up? If they think we're going to do, A, B, C, how do we then do X, Y, Z? And I think that's something that they're going to do throughout the course of this week, and then also start to look ahead, not just at the Dallas Cowboys, but also the Chicago Bears, the LA Rams, the Seattle Seahawks. You're going to see them start to look at those teams, like you mentioned, Paul, and really start to get a sense of, all right, these are the things that have worked against those teams, and these are the things that we're going to have to do once we get to that point in the season.
Washington, say we did, like I'm on the team, obviously not. Washington's a really weird temperature check at the moment for the NFC, because they played obviously Philadelphia twice, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, and the Rams, but unfortunately for division we're 0-3, but weirdly 2-0 against those big teams in the West, so that there may be something in there.
Yeah, no question. I think that's why it's we're 9 weeks into the season and there's 8 weeks left to go. There's a ton of football left to be played. So surely no divisions have been decided yet. I think there's a ton of football left to be played. A lot of narratives that can certainly change over the next 8 weeks.
See, I was quite upset with myself because I watched the Broncos against the Chiefs, and I saw that the Chiefs had a lot of success running, the speed option, and I thought to myself, oh, maybe the Eagles could do something like that. And then obviously that was one of the touchdowns, but because I hadn't said it anywhere, I hadn't printed it anywhere, I hadn't tweeted it, I just had to let it go. One last question, Fran. Obviously, thinking ahead, another area that you're well known at is the college game, or certainly looking at the college tape. Are there any players who you think, that obviously the Eagles got a lot of free agents, things will change greatly. Are there any college prospects so far that you've seen that you think might interest the Eagles and would certainly be a good fit in the systems that they are running at the moment?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think that, obviously at this point, and this is what everybody's doing, unless you think that you're going to be picking in the top 5 of the draft, everybody right now is just looking at these players and really just trying to get a sense of, where can they fit, how well do they play, and then once you get into the spring months of February and March, then you start to see boards start to get stacked. Okay, this is how this guy, this is where this player is going to get picked. This is where that player is going to get picked. So I don't know that any team is looking and saying, you know what, this guy would be a great fit for us in the first round, just because we're on the outside looking in terms of that part of the process. But I'll tell you what, there's some really talented players along the offensive line. This kid Quentin Nelson from Notre Dame, I've been saying since the summer, I think he's a top 10, top 15 type talent. We're starting to see some buzz now on him going in the top 5, and it certainly doesn't seem like the Eagles would be picking in that realm. But Quentin Nelson from Notre Dame is certainly very impressive if he were to declare. And then you look at the senior class, his teammate Mike McGlinchey, the left tackle, is a guy that I've been a big fan of for a long time. He's got the body type, he's got the feet. I think he's got the mentality to be a blindside protector in the NFL. He certainly has the physical traits. Some consistency issues, but to me, when I see some of the other tackles that have gone in the first round over the last few years, I think McGlinchey certainly is worthy of going in that realm. So he'll be certainly very interesting to watch throughout the course of the process as well.
I just want the nine-fingered wonder. The boy Fumagalli. I just want him.
Troy Fumagalli is a really good player. Is an interesting player. I don't know that he's going to come in and light the world on fire as an NFL prospect, but to me, when you watch him, I think you see a player who's just very solid across the board. He's a solid route runner. I think he's a better blocker than some would give him credit for. He's not a mauler at the point of attack by any stretch of the imagination, but a guy I think that just does everything well. Maybe nothing great, but is going to be a nice mid-round prospect and a nice player that I think will stick in the NFL for a long time.
Final question, Fran. It's 1:00 in the morning UK time, Sunday morning. Should I be watching TCU at Oklahoma, or as it's known in the trade, Catholics versus convicts?
I would be watching the Notre Dame Miami game. To me, when you watch that game, I think I mentioned the 2 offensive linemen in that game. You look at that Miami defensive line; they've got a defensive end in Chad Thomas that comes off the left side more often than not, but can be moved around. Miami's got some players on the offensive side of the ball that are worth watching, and to me, Notre Dame's offensive line they're worth the price of admission unto itself. The running back Josh Adams has been very, very productive so far this year, both as a runner and as a receiver. So I would be watching that game if I had to pick between those two.
Fantastic, Fran. Well, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll speak to you again soon.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
The brilliant Fran Duffy there, hitting us with some knowledge and making me... I was already to be honest, I'm already leaning Miami Notre Dame anyway, because secretly a U fan, so I was always going to go that way if I can keep my eyes open beyond 1:00 in the morning.
Secretly a U fan?
Well, I'm not... not to you, I'm secretly a U fan. People don't... On the internet, it's not something that I give much credence to on the Twitter, so to speak.
Can I just, which annoyingly I didn't check Twitter while we were talking to Fran, but some breaking news. The Eagles have signed defensive tackle Timmy Jernigan to a 4-year extension, $48 million extension that includes $26 million fully guaranteed.
Not surprising, Dutton, because he's been absolutely fantastic.
Oh, let's say him and Fletch could watch it all day.
And luckily you get to.
Yep.
But enough of real life football in the trenches, because you know what? It doesn't make you money and it doesn't win you fancy leagues. But you know what does? Your fancy darlings.
Hello, darling.
Who is it this week, Dutton?
Well, before we get there, I just want to quickly hit people with these significant milestones that could occur this weekend. If the Patriots win, that would be Bill Belichick's 270th regular season win and would make him tied for 3rd place all-time with Tom Landry. Phil Rivers needs 16 completions to get to 4,000 for his career. Ben Roethlisberger needs 28. If Eli Manning plays, which I assume he will, it would be his 208th consecutive start, tying the record for the 2nd most all-time. Can you guess? Can you guess with who?
His brother.
His brother Peyton. Yep. If Le'Veon Bell gets 21 yards from scrimmage and Antonio Brown gets 165 yards from scrimmage on Sunday, it will be the 2nd time that they have managed 1,000 scrimmage yards in the first 9 games of a season. They would be the 2nd set of teammates to have achieved that twice. And the last one, if Everson Griffin gets a sack against the Washington Redskins, he'll be the first person since sacks became an official statistic to record a sack in the first 9 games of a season.
And if anyone's seen Washington's offensive line, although getting fitter, not fit enough, high possibility that happens. Dutton, tell me your fancy darling is now. I'm waiting with bated breath here.
My fancy darling is Matthew Stafford. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but the Detroit Lions still can't run the ball worth a lick.
So
the Cleveland
when
Browns.
was the last time he did? Barry Sanders, maybe?
59 games without a 100-yard rusher.
Staggering.
And the last one was Reggie Bush. Probably the only 100-yard rushing game he ever had. Fraud. This will be, Matt Stafford has thrown for 300 yards in 3 straight games this season for the first time since 2011. In 2 previous meetings with the Cleveland Browns, he averages 335 yards per game, has 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And in his last 5 games at home, he has 1,555 pass yards, 9 TDs and 2 interceptions. Cleveland Browns are poo, and Stafford will feast. And little spoiler alert, we may hear his name again later.
Shock. Not everyone's good at fantasy, like me. I stink at the moment, loser of 4 straight in my league of record. I probably got some of these losers done, but tell me the one I need to avoid this week.
Phil Rivers. He has not been his gunslinging, self this season. He's still been effective. However, this week the Jaguars await, and you don't pass on the Jaguars. So downgrade all tight ends, downgrade all receivers and quarterbacks against them. So steer clear from him. And I say, if you can find, Stafford, he's your boy.
In my fancy team stings, can you guess who Mainty's Marvel's lead receiver is?
Keenan Allen?
Absolutely can't wait to him score 4 points this week and be called soft. But there you go. Let's make some people some money and let's do our daily fancy team of the week.
Mains and Duts. Daily fantasy team of the week.
Show me the money. Show me the money indeed. Neil, as I said, my team is a veritable feast of garbage players / garbage teams / trying to make some money. Give me a quarterback.
$6,800. Matthew Stafford, Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I think already mentioned why. My quarterback, 6,100, and playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's the
revenge game.
The New York Jets, Josh McCown, in a
revenge game bowl.
In a revenge game bowl. Factor, as obviously Ryan Fitzpatrick will be on the other side. I believe these 2 players have played for 47 of the NFL teams, but
counting Bulldogs, just the only one missing, I think.
Josh has been secretly good. Possibly,
he's been very good.
Apart from the fourth quarter, he struggled in a couple of fourth quarters. The Jets are beyond anybody's expectations. So yeah, and that's not the only Jets player I'm going to pick this week. Here we go. Running back 1.
$8,400. Leonard Fournette. Just to keep you in the picture.
Can I just check the time before you put me in the picture?
This will be. He's aiming for his 4th game in a row with at least 130 yards from scrimmage. He has 300-yard rushing games, second for the most in the AFC. He has 6 rushing touchdowns and has a touch on 62% of all of his snaps. That's the highest rate in the league. They're playing the Chargers. Chargers can be run on and will be run on.
You know what I love about predictions, Neil?
We get them wrong.
Yeah, but some of them you get spectacularly wrong, and some of them you can't help but get wrong, injuries and whatever. But if I would have said to you in week 10 that the Bears were playing the Packers and the Bears would be favoured by 5 points...
Get out.
6,100. Mr. Howard. I literally can't get my head around picking a Bear against the Packers. But I'm doing it. Jordan Howard, 6,100. Welcome aboard.
Jordan Howard has 1,975 rushing yards. It's the most ever by a Chicago running back through 23 games of their career. Just for a little history lesson, Walter Payton played for the Chicago Bears.
That's the Gale say, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you want even longer history. Who's your running back to, Neil?
One of the lowest key workhorse backs in the NFL, Mr. Carlos Hyde. He, last week, in a very, very bad game, he had 9 receptions and 84 receiving yards.
Yep.
He rushed for 93 yards and a touchdown the last time he played the New York Giants. That's who they're playing, of course. He has a touchdown in 2 of his last 3 home games against NFC East teams. In his last 9 home games, he averages 108.9 yards per scrimmage per game. And he's been targeted on 21.3% of CJ Beathard's throws. And I say they're a rare home favourite. That's how bad the Giants are. The Niners are favoured, so he may see some positive game scripts. He may get the carries, and as we've seen, he'll get the targets. And as we say every week, DraftKings is PPR.
2 questions, Dutton. Question 1, Carlos Hyde seems good. Why do the 49ers not want him? And 2, why is CJ Beathard still playing?
Have you seen the 49ers line?
I don't care.
I'm not putting a player that I've just spent a second round draft pick behind that.
So are we saying he's not going to play all year?
I wouldn't be stunned. If they say we're not going to play you, but we'll get you some help this summer.
Okay.
Next spring.
Fair enough. My running back to PPR. This makes me physically sick. It's Lamar Miller. He's 5,200. He's playing the Rams. The Rams don't stop the run. Weird. Tom Savage probably can only throw dump offs. Well, we'll find out. Yeah, so I've gone with Lamar Miller, 5,200. Something like plus 10 points, lots of games. I know a lot of them were with Sean Watson, but let's see how it goes.
I want 0 to do with the Texans' offense while he's under centre.
Yeah, true. I know. Bit of a shot in the dark. Who's your wide receiver 1, Dutton?
5,200. Robbie Anderson. He had a TD catch last week. That was his 3rd game in a row with the TD catch. In his last 2 games against NFC opponents, he averages 101.5 yards per game. And he has double-digit PPR points in 4 straight games. They're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a mess. So, yeah, I like Robbie Anderson.
We'll come on to him later. My wide receiver 1 is Antonio Brown. He's 9,500. He's playing the Colts. I don't know if you know the Colts stink.
Yeah, they're terrible.
And, I've gone for the reasonably priced rest of the team 1-star man. My star man is Antonio Brown.
Can't really argue, can you?
Yeah, I mean, you take a different approach every week, and I just looked and thought, I'm taking Antonio Brown. Like last week, that's where this, we recorded early last week. You picked DeAndre Hopkins. I picked Will Fuller. Day after the podcast comes out, Deshaun Watson's got no leg. You can't. What you do with that? You've just got to suck it up. This week I've gone with Antonio Brown. Spent all the money. There we go. Who's your wide receiver 2, Dutton?
Wide receiver 2, one of my favourite players in the NFL, doesn't play for the Eagles. Rashard Matthews, 4,700. He had a touchdown catch last week and has receiving touchdown in 2 of his past 3 home games. He's one of 4 wide receivers in the AFC with 90-plus catches, 1,400-plus receiving yards, and 10 touchdown catches since the beginning of last season. They're playing the Bengals. The Bengals are another hot mess. Defensively, they've not been too bad, but I like the fact that Rashard's got a nose for the end zone. So I think if he gets a touchdown, he should return value.
I just don't know what to make of the Tennessee Titans. I don't like the winning, but they don't look good. And concerned by Mariota. You know, that Mariota Winston conversation's gone to like, let's have neither of them and don't talk about that we ever had that conversation. Do you know what I mean? I expect better. I hope you see something on that side. My wide receiver 2 is your wide receiver 1. 5,200. It's Robbie Anderson against the Bucks. As you mentioned, scorer of multiple touchdowns in multiple games, and he's my stack with Josh McCown. Who's your wide receiver 3, Neil?
Stack time. Your favourite wide receiver.
Oh, Golden Tate.
6,800. He has 21 catches for 295 yards and a touchdown in his last 3 games. This will be he's going for his 4th game in a row with at least 7 receptions. And in his last 5 home games, he has 376 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. As I say, the Browns stop the run. Stafford won't bother with a run. He'll just feed Golden Tate. PPR gold.
I think as well, we should... I think... I look at someone like Golden Tate and he's seeing what's going on around the league, and he'll be looking to up his touchdown celebration game. Keep your eye on goal. That may be the only reason to when that comes on Red Zone to keep an eye out, because if Tate gets in the end zone, fireworks may occur.
His Twitter handle is Showtime, so what do you expect?
Exactly. My wide receiver 3, Dutton, similar kind of concept in multiple catches. So this guy's had 5 catches in 4 out of his last 6 games, and that doesn't include last week when he only caught 4 balls but caught 2 touchdowns. 5,200. It's Mr. Robert Woods. He's playing the Texans. We know it spreads it around, and I'm not saying you're going to get the 2 touchdowns. They may go somewhere else this week, but as we mentioned, 5 grabs in 4 out of his last 6 games. Volume is a good thing, so I've got Robert Woods in.
Yep, nice safe play.
Tight end.
Kyle Rudolph, 4,600, playing the Washington Redskins.
Can I stop you here? Tight end. Kyle Rudolph, 4,600, playing the Washington Redskins. And you can give real stats. I'm going to make a joke. The last time the Skins were good against tight ends, Richie Pettibone coached the defense. Ask your parents, kids.
Richie Pettibone did intercept several passes in the 1963 NFL Championship game between the Bears and the Giants. But anyway, Kyle Rudolph is looking for his 3rd game in a row on the road with a touchdown catch and his 4th in a row against the Washington Redskins.
Washington may win the game. It'll be close. I expect it to be a close game. Kyle Rudolph will score.
How great is it, by the way, that even if he doesn't play this week, that Teddy's back?
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I don't know why we're only allowed him or Bradford in the league at any one time. And I have to say now, I hope Mrs. Bradford, I believe he's married, sits Sam down and said, we've earned $114 million over all these contracts. Enough's enough.
Gibbet. From what I hear, I think it was Ross Tucker who said it, he's actually quite a good golfer. So, time to get that handicap down. And, we've seen pro athletes in other sports take up pro golf.
Exactly. Who's your flex?
My flex is another tight end, 4,100. It's Cameron Brate. Now, I don't know if anyone's mentioned this, but the Bucks quarterback this week is Ryan Fitzpatrick. And Ryan Fitzpatrick went to...
Yeah, I think he went to Harvard, Neil.
Cameron Brate went to...
I think he also went to Harvard.
But aside from that spurious connection, he is going for his 3rd game in a row against an AFC opponent with a touchdown catch. He has a receiving touchdown in 2 of his last 3 games and leads all NFL tight ends with 12 touchdown receptions since the beginning of last season. The Jets are allowing 2.8 offensive touchdowns per game, tied for most in the league, and have allowed the 2nd most touchdowns to opposing tight ends this season.
My flex is Mohamed Sanu, 5,100. He's playing the Dallas Cowboys. He's had 3 really good weeks, and I expect it to continue. I also feel a little bit better about it right now, as the Atlanta may get more possessions now that Ezekiel Elliott isn't on the field.
Can we talk about Julio Jones?
I can't talk about Julio Jones. I know you say that he doesn't get in the end zone, but that's just taking the piss.
Yeah, that's being in the end zone all alone. being in the end zone. Literally, the nearest person to him was in South Carolina, and they're playing in North Carolina, and he dropped it. And it wasn't a graceful drop either.
Messi misses open goal. LeBron James misses dunk. Best cricketer misses full toss. It's literally this kind of thing that just happened. Would it be Steve Smith in cricket? At the moment, would it be Steve Smith? I don't know. I'm thinking.
You know who it'd be.
It'd be Joe Root.
No, your mate.
Who?
Virat.
Yeah, it'd be Virat. Yeah, it would be Kohli. But it's that kind. You just watched it, and I watched it, and I was like, "Did that really just happen?"
Yeah, I've gone back in time and watched Troy Williamson doing this.
I think all of us just text each other at exactly the same moment with like, "What the."
Who's not pretty?
Who's your defense, Neil?
$3,000. The Chicago Bears. Brett Huntley and the Packers stink.
Wait, I just need to read mine. $3,000. The Chicago Bears. Brett Hundley and the Packers stink. If I would have had a hot take this week, I was like, "Hi Packers, welcome to what the rest of the NFL feels like. 25 years with a top quarterback. Yeah, you haven't got one at the moment. Welcome to our world."
Yeah. Don't expect sympathy.
Yeah, some people saying they felt sorry for the Green Bay Packers.
Piss off.
They've had a top quarterback since 1992.
Yeah, I have seen at least 6 games of the Eagles over the last 15 years, quarterbacked by Kevin Cobb and Mike McMahon. Piss off.
John Beck, Rex Grossman. Do you know what I mean? You're not getting sympathy from me, Green Bay Packers fans.
Yeah.
It's terrible that your quarterback's out, but welcome to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Let's quickly skip through this, Dutton. Who's your quarterback?
Stafford.
I've got Josh McCown, running back 1.
Fournette.
I've got Howard, running back 2.
Hyde.
Miller, wide receiver.
Anderson.
Brown, wide receiver. Matthews. Anderson, wide receiver.
Tate.
I've got Woods, tight end.
Rudolph.
Cosine, flex.
Bright.
I've got Sanu. And the defence.
The Bears.
That Bears. Dutton. Where can people catch you this week on the internet?
Well, this week, I'd say if you want to go back and download the NFL show with Nat Coombs, I was on offering my fantasy words of wisdom before being mocked by Laura Woods for my losing record in the TalkSport League, then saying, "And we're taking advice from you, why?" That was harsh, Laura. I'll be on Sunday at some point. Don't know if it's before or after the games. It'll probably be before. My tight end streaming article is already out. And also, I have an article coming out on Number Fire about the Los Angeles Rams, the greatest show since the greatest show on turf.
Nice. Is that I think we need to come up with a cooler name, Neil, that doesn't quite trip off the tongue.
It does if you're not biting your lip when you say it. That hurts. Ow.
He is at Ndutton13. I am at Mangy7. Combined, we are at waxing_lyrical. Follow us on Twitter, rate and review us on iTunes, and tell your friends all about us. And don't forget to follow at FDuffy3, especially if you love the X and O's breakdown of the Philadelphia Eagles. Not just if you're an Eagles fan, you learn about the game. You do. When he's on like number 62, like I saw today, I was like, wow, this may take me a while to catch up with. When he's on a roll. Exactly. That's it for me and Neil. Thanks again to Fran, and these top guys are out. Right.